He takes a shot at Faizon Love and he says,
anybody that ever told you differently was a fat Faizon liar.
That line was funny to me because it just seemed like out of nowhere. Shannon Sharp even said,
Faizon just caught a stray.
When I was reviewing this on my stream, somebody said that's not a stray. I went and looked and it isn't a stray. Him and Faizon have had some beef online, and Faizon has obviously gone on his Instagram and has been posting pictures taking massive L's. Look at his Instagram posts. See, here he is. He's posting a picture of him with the kid. This is that scene that I was talking about. Then he posts a picture of his Groupon sales. But then people in the comments are like, wait, bro, I can get Kevin Hart tickets on Groupon. Like, that's a common industry practice. But more importantly, where are your specials? Then he mentions...
Faizon said that getting a Netflix special is easy. I have 12 specials. Guess how many Faizon got? 0.
And that's facts. And of course, what people are in his Instagram mentions... mentioning that. And it feels like during this time that Shannon Sharp is starting to do the wingman tactic. When I describe that, it's this. A lot of times when you're doing comedy, if someone is saying something that's irreverent or not proper, what you do is you have one character written into the show that will be able to say things that they're not supposed, that will be able to correct the narrative so that the crazy character can say whatever they want. So it doesn't seem like the show is endorsing whatever the crazy character is saying. A perfect example of this is something like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. If you watch that show, during the very first few episodes, the character Sweet D is only always in there telling the guys, hey, this is a bad idea, whatever you guys are doing. Like, no, you guys, are you sure? Like, and she's always like the voice of reason so that the other 3 characters can be as crazy as they want to and the show doesn't get a bad rep for just promoting irreverence, right? But eventually they just let it go and it's like, no, all 4 of these characters are narcissists and it's crazy as frig. It's one of my favorite comedies. All that to say, Shannon Sharp is doing that thing where I'm letting you say whatever you got to say. And I'm like, man, come on now. Hold up, though. Wait a minute.
But I don't disagree. I don't dislike all the Cowboys. Katt, man, come on.
I'm saying these things, but in reality, it's like, yeah, keep going. Say whatever you want. And that's how it feels like he's doing. He's wingmanning. As long as I say, man, come on, man, then now I'm not endorsing it. But I'm definitely not doing anything to stop you from saying it, right? The thing is with these things, I don't think he's the progenitor of these statements. I think that what ends up happening is for some of these things, these are things that have been talked about in just, gossip channels and just on the internet and stuff like that. People have connected these dots and he's seen it himself and he's just kind of saying these things as well. I don't know that he came up with this. Like even like the dress thing, that's not his. Dave Chappelle was one of the first comedians to make that statement and bring that to the main conversation on Oprah of all places. But anyway, here's a picture that clearly it looks like what he's saying, you're describing it. I don't know why he had to say their wives had weird faces.
If you sign up for their program, you get a light-skinned, weird-faced wife that never do an interview. Listen, in 20 years, won't do an interview. Nobody's ever talked to her, and she's never been interviewed anywhere. And now, understand, I'm not talking about one person. What I just told you applies to 7 people. How they all end up with that. That's part of what you get.
But it is what it is. Then someone mentions about jealousy and he says what I think is another dig, but also a beautiful bar. Listen, you got to hear him deliver it. Listen to this.
I can't be jealous. I've never seen them have anything that I ever wanted.
And he starts saying about how he's pretty much independent. He's done what he wants to do. He mentioned when I spoke about Michael Jackson, they tried to cancel.
Wow, Michael Jackson is freed in a motherfucker smelling like little boys' booty holes, and I'm supposed to be excited. Fuck Mike.
And to be honest with you, I wholly disagree with him on his Michael Jackson take. That's another conversation for another video. The Michael Jackson thing is one of the disgusting things about Hollywood that I just can't respect. The fact that he still is catching these L's posthumously despite all of the evidence. But again, that's another video. We'll get into that on a different day. Remind me, we'll talk about that. Here's another thing that Katt Williams did that I don't agree with. Listen to this.
All of these big dick deviants is all catching hell in 2024. It's up for all of them. It don't matter if you Diddy or whoever you is.
I don't know what that nigga was on there. What are you talking? What's happening? Why would you say that? Why are you talking about these my brain can't. That's pause, unequivocally pause. What are you talking about, bro? Why would you say that? But then I think really what's at the core of a lot of this is where he mentioned.
Because in 30 years, I've done nothing but collect information, knowledge, and your secrets.
It reminds me of that character Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, where it's like, yo, the whole thing is about we're not playing in power, like direct power. We're playing in secrets and information and subtlety. That's how Katt Williams has played the game in a lot of ways. I don't have to get into the inner circle. I just got to orbit the inner circles. And as I'm orbiting it, I will pick up enough information to where now I become powerful. And when you say, well, how is he powerful if he's not inside of these inner circles? Well, when I can do an interview and in 5 days, this interview can become the second largest interview of all time. I don't know. At this point, the only interview that has more views is one hosted by Joe Rogan. He surpassed the other one that was hosted by Joe that had 32 million views, which was with Elon Musk. Shannon Sharpe has now hosted the second largest interview in the world, and I believe it will go on to be number one. It surpassed the second largest, which had done those numbers in about 3 years, 9 months. It did that in 5 days. Now he goes on and he starts talking about how he shaped Money.
Because I wrote the words for Money Mike. I designed the hair for Money Mike. I collaborated with the wardrobe department and made outfits to make sure that no one in America would be wearing what Money Mike was wearing. I told them to go get the Prowler. I then told them to paint it purple. I told them don't have an actor playing a pimp. We could get an actual pimp, Archbishop Magic Don Juan, to play.
Which Ice Cube definitely corroborated.
He wrote a lot of his part because, like I said, he was giving us jewels, so we were keeping the camera rolling. He was coming off the dome. He was coming prepared every day to steal the show. That was his mission.
We got to give him his credit. When he's talking about, hey, I write and I do this and I believe that. There were other interviews where Ice Cube had came forward and said, yeah, man, he showed up on the set and he outworked pretty much everyone there. That dude was dedicated. He was hungry. Why he made that character pop the way he did. And he did so with writing as well as performing. Then he starts talking about Steve Harvey. And during this time, it's important to note that he was homeless. He was living on the set. Like he didn't know where he was going to go. He just had a son. And so he was like, yeah, I was on the set, trying to make this thing happen. This is all the money I was going to be having. This is how much it was going to cost to fix my teeth. Because he also had, I think, a tumor in his mouth. So it was like with all the surgery and everything he was going to need, he was going to have that because he didn't have health insurance. So he just had to come up with his money. Friday after next was going to be his path to do that. After he paid for that, then he's like, yeah, now I can go in and continue to do what I got to do. If you notice the Money Mike character, you can't see it. He basically hides those with his mouth as he's talking. Now, with all that being said, he says, as far as Steve Harvey is stealing his story. He was never homeless.
This is like Steve Harvey telling people he used to be homeless. That's my story. That's not his story. Steve Harvey was never homeless.
This doesn't add up. I'm fact checking here.
Every time I gave him a joke, so I'd make an extra $40 a week.
Right.
I'm going like, it's 1980, man.
He said 25 years ago that he was doing tours and so on and so forth. You know how much time it takes to go 25 years ago from today? In 1984, it's like 16 years. Do you know how much can change in 16 years when you're still trying to make it? I can't say that Steve was never homeless. And if your argument for why he was never homeless was something 25 years ago, how do we know that Steve wasn't homeless 30 years ago, 35 when he first started? At the beginning of comedy, it's not well paying. And if you're going to go out on that limb, a lot of people have had that story, just like Tiffany Haddish did, right? So just like you did. You were homeless for different reasons. That was before you were doing comedy and things like that. But still, actually, even after you were doing comedy, you had those situations. So I don't know that we can say that that's not true. I don't know where he would be saying that. I can get him maybe feeling like, I think when you have that much bias against someone like Steve Harvey, that's why he's saying. Now, he says,
Guy Torrey did a beautiful special about the Comedy Store and Fat Tuesday, where he said that Steve and Cedric and Kevin Hart and Tiffany Haddish came through there and made... All lies. Steve and Cedric never performed at the Comedy Store at all. Tiffany was only seen at the Laugh Factory.
But when you look on the Comedy Store's website, here are their receipts for all of their paid regulars. And on there, those names, Cedric the Entertainer and Steve Harvey, are there. See for yourself. So here we have it. Yes, they were there. Yeah, they did perform there. I don't know what you mean they never performed there. I don't know where he gets that statement from. That seems like that's just not true. Again, the vast majority of what he's saying is true. It doesn't seem like he's intentionally lying, but this statement is just certifiably false. These are where things start taking a dark turn, where, you start feeling like, man, you crossing some boundaries, but fortunately this one's in prison. But where he says,
are you not afraid about being blackballed again?
They canceled me for talking about Harvey Weinstein before the thing came out, but he offered to suck my penis in front of all my people at my agency. What am I supposed to do? He did all of that. I'm thinking I'm the only black person on the script. I get there, it's 3 other black guys on there. Woo! Huh.
So you wonder what they did to get that.
I told him no. What y'all do?
A big overarching theme within this interview was about the idea about what some people have called buck breaking. I've talked about that before, but what basically seems to be this idea that in Hollywood, that a lot of time there are attempts to emasculate Black men or kind of force homosexual acts on them and things like that. Of course, this is something that was claimed by Terry Crews. He was sitting there and he was giving his details in court about a man literally grabbing his penis at a party in front of everyone, a high, very powerful Hollywood executive, and him feeling powerless in that moment. He's literally in tears and you got people laughing at him and making fun of him. That theory has been there. That seems akin to the idea that what Dave Chappelle was saying about wearing a dress and how he was unwilling to do so and how they were almost trying to force you to do so. How almost every single powerful Black man, Black comedian, they force into dresses. Not that it never happens to any white ones, but that this is a claim that people have been making about the emasculation of Black men within Hollywood. Kevin Hart was very well aware of these claims because someone directly asked him in an interview.
On Saturday Night Live, you know, it was a choice that I made. So I think it's all about your pick of what's funny to you and what you feel will be funny to others. And I will say that's the knowledge that I now have and understand. But from the outside looking in, you always go, oh, I ain't gonna do it. Ain't no way. Why? Why I gotta do it? I ain't gonna compromise myself. For what? I am who I am. But then you're in a movie, and then it calls for a funny scene. Hey, what if you went in this way? And if it's actually funny, it's funny.
Dave Chappelle's claimed that he made this stuff about, you know, man, you got to have your boundaries and so on and so forth. I haven't been asked, but, you know, I got my boundaries and so on and so forth. Then in SNL, he gets offered the dress and he wears the dress. But you knew about these claims. So you can't say you did so in ignorance. You can't say that you were just completely uninformed. But sometimes being willing to play the game is how you get to greater levels of success. And you might feel like wearing the dress isn't that important. Now, kissing rock in the mouth, that might be a whole nother thing. The internet came forward with those receipts or some scene where it seemed like Shaq was bending him over a car. And it was just absurd, the collection of stuff that has happened. Now, again, maybe Kevin Hart just feels like these things are funny. I don't know. But it just seems like this is what Katt Williams had a big theme about, the idea, the things that are required in order to be successful. And so when you start talking about these things, these are some of the things he echoed in his conspiracy tour. And it sounds like, yeah, there has been these sort of stuff does exist. We now know Harvey Weinstein actually was doing these things. We knew he was doing it to women. You know, then you had your Richard Pryor making a statement about, you know, sucked the penis before. And then he mentioned when he banged his first man, but he used, you know, different choices of words right in front of Paul Mooney. And he said these things. And so then, you know, there were people that in his biography that mentioned that he had sex with Marlon Brando and all these kinds of things. So that stuff has been around in Hollywood. And you had Eddie Murphy and they were talking about how he picked up a trans. You know, so you have all of these stories that are happening where people are making these claims. So it starts getting kind of real. You know what I mean? And so Katt Williams, having seen all this stuff, and these stories have been in Hollywood forever. So this is a big overarching theme. So he says,
they pay you to not talk about things they don't want you to talk about.
Sorry to take this back to Monique one more time, but when Monique was getting canceled by Lee Daniels and Oprah Winfrey and Tyler Perry, and she went on the Steve Harvey show, Steve Harvey admitted to this. Listen to him say that he sold out his integrity and why he wasn't able to support her publicly. Monique makes it abundantly clear this.
And I gotta put my brother Steve on the list. Y'all knew I was not wrong. Each one of you said to me, Monique, you're not wrong. And when I heard you go on the air and you said, my sister done burnt too many bridges, and there's nothing I can do for her now. Steve, do you know how hurt I was?
This is what she's saying. Here he is saying,
we out here in a game. This the money game. This ain't the black man's game. This ain't the white man's game. This the money game.
She says, what about the integrity game? And he's
before the money game, it's called the integrity game. And we've lost the integrity worrying about the money.
But Mo,
and wait a minute.
If I crumble, my children crumble, my grandchildren crumble. I cannot, for the sake of my integrity, stand up here and let everybody that's counting on me crumble so I can make a statement.
He's saying he sold his integrity for the bag. He said it. Listen for yourself. I lost all respect for Steve Harvey at that moment. That's him saying he's paid to not talk about what he can't talk about. The interesting part is, and this is the last thing I'll try to say about this so we can get back on topic, he lost his show over that interview because one of the things that he cut out of that interview was him talking about, he said, man, if them white boys had came to me and told me, I would have said them, so on and so forth. And he mentioned white boys a few times. He edited it out of what was aired, but of course that stuff is still there in pre-production. So now some of the studio heads and people saw that and then decided to take his show from him. So you sacrificed your integrity for the bag, and then he took the bag from you. I can't feel bad for him. And it was Steve Harvey who Katt Williams said,
You called Ocean 11 to get that nigga's part. What do you mean you didn't want to be a movie star?
This is another really funny part where they mentioned,
have you ever been on tour with any of these guys?
Every guy I mentioned to you is not funny out there in real life.
all the comedians I bring with me I think are funnier. That's him being humble. Same Kevin Hart bag. I know Katt Williams knows that none of the comedians on tour with him are funnier than him. I know he knows that. It's a humility. It's a humility cloak. I respect it. They go into Cedric. Cedric's the entertainer.
Well, you were Katt. Katt say you stole one of his jokes.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. You know what I mean? It was like the idea of the joke that he was even talking about don't even match up with no timelines.
Now when they're talking about Cedric the entertainer stealing the joke again, and he mentioned,
I had Cedric on here and I asked him about the joke stealing, and he said the timeline doesn't add up.
Correct.
To that point, you say.
Now Katt Williams very clearly details.
Right. So he thought that I was just a no-name comedian and that he could take this joke and nobody would know.
Right.
The issue was that I had already done this particular joke on BET's Comic View twice.
Right.
It had done so well on BET's Comic View that they had made it part of the commercial. So part of the commercial of make sure you tune in to BET was you seeing me doing this joke.
The internet found the receipts for it. Look, now he says,
Mark Curry had already helped me work on this joke because I thought it was good because I was getting a standing ovation on it. He had me go back in the lab and help me craft it to be an even more powerful joke.
And I think it's really crazy because they always talk about how Katt Williams is a hater, but he ain't hating on Mark Curry. He mentioned positive comedians. Then he mentions how he did that joke at the Comedy Store.
I'm doing this joke. It's on Comic View. Cedric comes to the Comedy Store. He watches me in the audience. He comes backstage. He tells me what a great job I did and how much he loves the joke.
The reason why I say this is a validated claim is because Cedric the entertainer didn't go and say, hey, I didn't do his joke. What he says was, these are different jokes. He doesn't say that I didn't see him do that joke. He's not saying that Katt Williams didn't do that joke. He's just saying,
look, I have no idea what this brother is talking about. That joke is over 30 years old, close to 30-something years old. I did the Kings of Comedy in 1999. Probably had been doing that joke 6-7 years before that. I don't even know if Katt was doing comedy then. So, again, he's a talented brother. I have no idea what he's talking about. I've never seen Katt do a space shuttle joke,
So you did see his joke. You did see him do the joke, and we all can see that that's the same joke. It's just be like if I was to do the exact same joke, I'm not a comedian, but if I was to do the exact same joke and I said, oh, yeah, instead, just imagine us being in heaven and, now we out there and we on clouds, and while we on these clouds, and I do the exact same joke and play some music. We're flying cloud. I'm driving my cumulonimbus cloud, and I do the exact same joke. It's the same thing, bro. You can't change the vehicle and now it's an entirely different joke. What are we talking about? Freak out of here. Then Katt Williams mentioned,
him and Steve had already apologized for me, so I gave him a pass for a decade.
Him nor Steve denied that they ever apologized to him. Now, I've shared my own previous stories in different videos about apologies in secret. I don't trust that. If you do something to me in public, I want it in public. I want that apology in public. Your apology should be as loud or louder than the offense that was given. Always. Because people will remember the offense, but not remember the apology. You can't offend me in public and then come back behind and be like, man, my bad. No. Because then what will end up happening is if I ever make a claim to someone else when they bring that up to me about, hey, this is what it was. Now I'm gonna have to now I gotta sit there and try to re-explain to them. No, he apologized. He was in the wrong for that. And when that happens, you'll find those people that were apologizing in secret will then double down. No, I didn't apologize. I wasn't saying I was wrong. It was just more that we had a different understanding. And now they walk back that apology. I'm not having that.